Your heart is literally pounding out of your chest and you're trying to control it, etc. But okay, now you arrest a dude, it could be 5, 6, 7 hours of paperwork.
Okay.
So obviously, again, the fast stuff slow, the slow stuff fast.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes.
Welcome to Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show, we have
Patrick O'Donnell.
Yes, we do. It was such a fun interview. Patrick's friend and friend of the podcast and friend to us. And he has his own podcast, Cops and Writers. That's right. So, yeah. And it was just a super fun interview.
Yeah, we talked to him about, he's a former police officer. And so we talked to him about writing police and law enforcement characters and how to avoid stereotypes. You want to hit the tropes, but you don't want to go so far into them that they're trite. So we talked to him about keeping things fresh and interesting. And it was a lot of fun to talk to him.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah. And we should talk about BookFunnel as our sponsor.
Yes.
They are great. I say he because I always just associate Damon Courtney with BookFunnel. Since he introduces himself everywhere, I'm Damon from BookFunnels. Yeah, that's great. But they're a great company. We've loved them. They've been awesome to writers in the writer community. They've just provided so many things. They have this cool feature called print codes, which allows you to print out a code and take it with you to events where you can give people a code for your ebook or audiobook. And just super fun. Just one more little resource that they offer authors to make our lives easier.
Yeah. And they're great because even if you're doing an in-person event, you could take some with you, especially if you have a first in series free and some people don't want to read print. Some people want to read ebook only. And you could say, here, you can have this and you can try the first book for free, or you could have it set up to go to a sample, something like that. So very cool. Very innovative. They're always coming up with cool stuff.
They're always coming up with cool stuff. They are. So what's been going on with you this week?
Oh, wait, let's give the link for BookFunnel.
Oh, yeah.
First.
Sorry.
It's okay.
They're so good to us, and now we're going to forget to do this.
So if you want to go to BookFunnel, you can go to bookfunnel.com/WIKT-podcast, and that gets you $50 off the yearly fee for new accounts, excluding the first-time author plan.
Yes.
So for me this week, I got the last of the books in for the Kickstarter, and those are gone. I just took them to the post office. Yeah. So that was very exciting. So I had to take myself out to lunch to celebrate because that's all done. And I feel really good about it, that it's all completed.
That's great.
And I've been doing a lot about the next book and then admin kind of cleanup stuff. And next week is Thanksgiving, and I feel like everything just starts unraveling, like schedules and commitments and stuff. Is like, everything's off.
It does.
So we're in limbo this week in the U.S. anyway. Yeah. I'm sure around the rest of the world, it's just another week. Yeah. But for us, it's like travel is insane next week, or actually when this goes out. So we're recording this early because we will both be we'll both be eating turkey next week.
Yes, we will. We will be, y'all. If it's not a dog, it's a baby or a kid. So as I say, in our never ending endeavor to be professional, there's no telling what you might hear on this podcast.
Yeah, we keep it really real.
Yes, we do. We do.
So what are you up to?
Not much. Speaking of kids, I do have my grandson until Monday. It's been a couple of weeks. He's on a hiatus from daycare for right now, but he's going to a new daycare on Monday, so that's good. It'll be good for him. We've had about all the cocoa fun we can have, but that's what I've been doing. I've been doing some admin stuff while he naps, but I still don't have my Facebook account, y'all, and things are not looking great around the Albright household right now, just as far as income for me and stuff. And again, I've said I do not have to make all the money, but I do have to make some.
You want to make some. I totally get that.
Yeah. So I am offering a $40 discount on my consultation. Any consultation booked between now and the end of December. It doesn't have to be like, we can book it out if you want, but it will be $40 off. So just tell me you heard that on the podcast. And that's between now, November of 2023 and December of 2023. And we will try to get you going in the right direction and give you some advice and work with you on just about anything you want to work on, except grammar. Yeah.
You can refer out for that, right?
I can refer you out to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that they can get to you through your website, right?
Through my website. Yeah. Because you can't message me. Do not message me on Facebook because you won't get me. Or you can email me. And I think my email is in the show notes, but if it's not, just go to my website and the contact page and you can message me there. Okay.
Yeah. All right. And we should also say thanks to our supporters for just being so faithful, and we appreciate it so much. And we're going to try and do a couple of exclusive supporter episodes coming up about tropes. So look for those in the feed. And if you want to support the podcast, you can go to Wish I'd Known podcast and then /support, I believe is the link. We'll have that in the show notes too.
We'll have that in the show notes. Also, if you haven't left us a review, we would love a review. We never ask for reviews, but it is a good way for people to find us. iTunes shows us to more people if you've left us a review. So we would love a review. Again, we're not high pressure on that.
Yeah. If you are so inclined, as we say in our intro.
If you're the reviewing kind, we'd love it.
That's right. Yeah.
But anyway, we should get on with the interview. It's awesome.
All right. Well, here is Patrick, and we hope everybody in the U.S. has a great Thanksgiving.
We do.
Today, we are really excited to talk to Patrick O'Donnell. Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for having me on this great show.
Oh, thanks so much. And we're so happy you're here.
I'm so happy because you guys, this podcast is like skyrocketing. I've been watching you guys. It's a really good podcast. I have my own, so I'm always curious about other people's podcasts. And you guys are doing you're red hot. You're doing great.
Thank you. Thank you. What's the word I'm looking for? It's a phrase. I don't know. We love it.
I was going to say, we love doing it. So we're having a lot of fun.
That's what counts.
Yeah. We're going to get into your podcast and how you help writers, but let me read your bio real quick and we'll get started. Patrick O'Donnell, a retired Milwaukee Police Department sergeant with a 25-year career, has transitioned into a productive retirement. He has authored 9 books, both fiction and nonfiction, hosts the Cops and Writers podcast, co-hosts Writers Inc. podcast, and manages the Cops and Writers Facebook group that is dedicated to answering authors and screenwriters' law enforcement questions. Wow. How do you get any writing done?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a binge writer.
Oh,
thank God for deadlines, because otherwise it's, oh gosh, I take a look at my calendar. I'm like, oh, I got plenty of time, man. I can do 500 words a day and I'm golden. Then life happens and all of a sudden it's, oh shoot, I really have to put the hammer down. Yep. Then I focus and I lock myself in the basement of one of the libraries around town and I just go to town.
There you go.
Rip it up.
Tell us how you got into writing.
I was not born with a typewriter in my hands, and Mom appreciated that. I had a terrible time in school because I was dyslexic, and that's back when they really didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And I had a hot temper. Most of my family thought I'd wind up in jail when I was a kid because I got into a lot of fights. I didn't start them, but I never backed down from them. It was a stupid Irish temper. But I did discover music. I was not gifted, but I was probably better than the average bear. And I think that sparked a little bit of a creative side in me. So I didn't start writing till a bunch later, until I became a police officer. And you do a ton of writing on the job. We're going to talk maybe a little bit later about some of the cliches or some of the untruths with like TV or whatever. In books, it's action. It's 5 minutes of a car chase or whatever, followed by 5 or 6 hours of writing. So you get fairly good at writing these police reports.
Yeah.
And back when I started, dinosaurs were roaming the earth,
Uh-huh.
and we hand wrote all of our
Oh my
police
gosh.
reports with carbon paper. We used carbon paper and white out pink, because the DA would get a certain color report, the defense attorney would get a certain color report, and then we'd have a hard copy. So it'd be in different colors. So you had to have all the different color whiteout when you made mistakes.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, we even had dictionaries in the assembly room where we wrote these reports, physical dictionaries. I thought I was high speed because I bought one of those electronic like spell checkers. And I'm just like, this thing is the coolest thing ever, because I can't spell. Like I said, I'm dyslexic, and all gets bobbled around.
Yeah.
So you have to tell this story.
Right.
I would tell my cops later on, I got promoted and I'm approving their reports. And if it's not in the report, it didn't happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you have to be very cognizant, and there's a certain way you have to write these reports. And it's not exactly, obviously you're not going to embellish anything. It's like Joe Friday, just the facts, that kind of thing. So you get used to doing it in a certain frame of mind, but that kind of exercise the writing muscle, maybe. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So I'll back up a little bit. I went to college and got a BA in sociology.
Okay.
That qualified me to sell cars and be a restaurant manager. Or go into social work. And to be a social worker, you need 4 more, at least a master's. And I'm like, I barely squeaked through like a 4-year college. There's no way I'm going to do that. So what I did was I sold cars, I bartended, I did all this stuff before I became a cop. Then I become a cop, and I have people coming up to me and says, hey, could you help me buy a car? People hate buying cars. It's like going to the dentist or public speaking.
It's the worst. Yeah.
So I wrote a book on how to write. They're like, you should really write a book about this. So I'm like, okay. So I wrote a book. I called it I Never Wore Plaid, Insider Secrets from a Former Car Salesperson.
Oh, I love that.
That's a great title.
I put it under a pen name because any kind of off-duty employment is going to get, the chief has to approve it. You have to do this big formal whoop-de-woo. And this chief didn't approve any off-duty employment. So I just did it under the radar. I just flew under the radar. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I did that, but I started going to conferences. I started going to 20. I was at the first 20 books. I started going to book conferences. I started like just cold emailing other authors. And I'm just like, okay, how do I do this? The first book was more or less a glorified PDF that I threw up on Amazon, and it sold, but not like great. Right. But I'd go to these conferences and people would be like, hey, you're that police guy. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have a police shirt on. I'm not like waving a police flag or wearing a hat or something, but they always find out. And it's, hey, I got this question. I'm writing this book, yada, yada. It's, hey, would a gun do this? Would a car do that? What does that look like? Right. So that kind of started to spread. So I was friends with Craig Martell, Brian Cohen, and a bunch of other indie authors. And they're like, and I was writing other stuff. And they're like, why don't you write a book or books about how police procedure for writers, getting your facts straight. So I'm like, I was in the middle of a second post-apocalyptic book, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'll give it a shot. So I started a little Facebook group. It was me, my editor, and like a buddy. And now I've got like 6,500 people in there. Wow. And it's cops and writers, and I've got cops. I've got law enforcement for almost every branch you can think of from all over the world. And writers. And they just say, is this feasible? Would this person get arrested for that? Et cetera, et cetera. And then I just want everybody to be comfortable. I love the 20 books mantra. There is no such thing as a stupid question. We're not going to, this is quote unquote a safe place. We're not going to make fun of you. We're not going to whatever. You're not a cop. You don't know. Right. So that just snowballed. So now my Facebook group is rocking. I started a podcast to promote the books. And now that's going well. That's great. And I'm having a blast. I think it's a ton of fun. That's awesome. So that's more or less how I got into it.
So when you went to that first 20 books, you hadn't put out a book yet? Except for your car salesman book?
Yes. I had that one. And I may have had, no, I think that, yeah, that was the first one. That was, and I only knew one author, and I saw her for 5 minutes when we were waiting in line to check in. And after that, that was it. And
I think we met at that conference. Yeah.
Yeah. But oh yeah, I'm not an introvert. I'm an extrovert. And I have no problem meeting people and talking to them. You have to be a decent cop.
Right.
Yeah. So I just made connections with people.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Great. I think, and it's such a great idea for the writers. We need resources to help us with all our questions and things. And it's almost like we need a police officer, a lawyer, a doctor, professions, so that we can ask questions. And because I write cozies, which are very light on the police aspect, but it has to be there. And you don't want it to be, incredibly unbelievable. So I think it's a great resource to have. And I think I'm not surprised at all that your Facebook group is so huge and the podcast is popular, because people, and when you Google something, you could get a whole bunch of contradictory results, and you need an expert to help you. Yeah. But anyway, we'll get back into the police stuff in just a moment. So let's talk about what is your definition of success?
The most obvious would be money, fame, a Ferrari, the usual stuff. But I just want to go a month without worrying about bills and have some money left over to throw at the kids and the grandkid, that kind of thing. Yeah. But I do have a quick story for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. About 6 months ago, I had a buddy that owned one of the local bars in Milwaukee. It's called Roman's Pub. He'd been in the bar business for 50 years. His dad was a bartender. But before he was a bartender, he was a cop in Milwaukee. So he had a soft spot for the cops. And we knew we could go in there and it'd be friendly. And it's a very tribal culture. They like to hang out in I hate using the word safe place, but I guess we know we're not going to get ambushed by reporters or cop haters or whatever the case may be. And this guy, he liked us. And he was known as the godfather of craft beer in Milwaukee. He opened up this craft beer bar before it was cool, before it was trendy, and it just caught on. And it's a real eclectic part of Milwaukee. It's in Bayview, which is just a part of the city of Milwaukee, and just a great guy. And we had been friends for years. He was diagnosed with esophagus and liver cancer, and he was going through chemo where he'd have to sit in this chair for 6 hours and get this chemo. And he bought one of my books, and I didn't even know it. I'm writing with Michael Anderle. It's called it's Brew City Blues. It's like Hill Street Blues, but set in Milwaukee. And I didn't realize that he bought that book, and that's what he was doing when he was going through chemo. So he's reading this book, and he loved it. I was there, and he would bartend. He would open the bar for 4 hours. And it was more or less just to see his friends. And things weren't going great. And he'd still be behind the bar. And he told me, he says, yeah, I really love your book. And I said, shit, I'm going to have to give you all my books then. So the next day I ran over there with the rest of the series. There's 4 books in the series. I'm writing that with Michael Anderle. And he's like, oh yeah, this is great. Eventually he passed. It was about 3 months ago. And we had the wake or celebration of life or whatever you would call it after the funeral at his bar. And his brother was there and a couple of his best friends were bartending. And one of them pulled me off to the side and he says, you don't realize how much he loved those books. I'm like, really? He says, yeah, he didn't finish them all, but that's what he would do when he was going through all this. And I still get shivers just thinking about it. It's like something that I created helped him through that really horrible time.
Yes.
And for me, that's the definition of success. I'll take that all day long.
Oh, yeah. I love that. That's perfect. That's a perfect answer. Yeah.
I think that's the reason a lot of us write is we're not actually in it. We would love the money or the fame, but knowing that we would take it all if we could get it all.
Why not?
but knowing that you've touched people and helped them through a difficult time is huge.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, I didn't realize it. He said it brought back a lot of memories of his dad when he was a police officer in Milwaukee.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I'm just like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. What do you wish you'd known about writing and craft when you started?
Oh boy, a lot of things.
Uh-huh.
What jumps out at me is a few things that I didn't pay close enough attention to. James Patterson said, write the slow stuff fast and the fast stuff slow. And I'm thinking to myself, it's so true and it's so obvious. But sometimes we miss that mark. We're told show, not tell.
Right.
But there's got to be a balance, right? Between the two. It's, again, like police reports. I'm not going to write a book and dedicate like 6 chapters to somebody writing a police report.
Right.
It's going to be a snooze city, and your writer is just going to be like, yeah, we're done.
Yeah.
But if you have like cool fight scene or a car chase or
right.
whatever, you do it really slow. So yeah, the slow stuff fast and the fast stuff slow. I thought, man, that is so cool. I should have been doing that before. And another one that jumps out at me is, the chapters have to have a purpose. If it doesn't have a purpose, get rid of it.
Yeah.
Mark Cameron was talking about this. The guy who writes the Tom Clancy books, writing for the Tom Clancy campus. And I'm like, that makes so much sense. But until somebody tells me that, it doesn't sink in. It's, wow, I need these like little lightning strikes or revelations. And and also in every chapter, you would hope that your first couple of sentences have a little bit of a hook to pull somebody in. Yeah. And the end, maybe a little bit of a cliffhanger. So somebody isn't going to put it down. They want to see what happens next. Right. Obviously, that may differ a little bit on genre, but I think that's a universal. Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. One of my police officers that I was supervising, I was good friends with her husband that was a sergeant in a different district. We've worked together. And she comes up to me after a roll call in the morning. She said, Sarge, I have a bone to pick with you. And I'm like, oh boy, what did I do? And she says, it's Todd. Every night he's reading your effing book. And he keeps on saying one more chapter. I want to see what happens to this guy. I want to see what happens. And I'm like, whew, I did my job.
Yeah. You're going, I'm sorry, I'm not sorry.
Yeah. Exactly.
That is funny. Yeah.
That is great.
That's true, because I remember when I was first writing in that critique group that I've talked about, and they would say, this is not moving the story forward. Even if it wasn't a whole chapter, it was a section of a chapter. It was not moving the story forward. It was like I had stopped to just look around and give a little extra expose on what was happening around me, as opposed to just moving the story forward. And I remember thinking at first, but it's part of the story. But then I realized what they were saying is exactly what you were saying. It's not vital. If it's not vital and it's not pulling the reader through the story, then it's not. Save it and give it away at the end for a scene or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we get wrapped up in it because we're knee deep in our own story, and it's hard to get the big view when you're on that. And that's where like ARC readers and a good editor, et cetera, are invaluable.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to write through certain things just to get them out of the way sometimes. And then you can go on and you're like, okay, now for me, I have to set the scene. And sometimes I don't need all those details, but I need them as a writer, but the reader doesn't need them all. We can go back and delete stuff too. Yeah.
100%, because like the book I'm writing, some of the stuff I'm writing right now last night, and it's like, this probably won't make it through the cutting room floor. Right. But I have to have it in my head to move the story forward.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you can always take it out.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. What about marketing? What do you wish you known about marketing?
I wish I would have marketed with a plan or a purpose. I was literally Mr. Throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. I'm listening to all these podcasts. I'm talking to people. And it's like, ooh, reader news. I'm like, what's that? Oh, cool. I'll spend some money on that and I'll do it. But I didn't have a plan. I didn't do it with purpose. And all I was doing was there'd be a spike in sales, but then it would go back down to where it was before. And I'm like, what did I accomplish? So I met Craig Martell for the first time for drinks. And he was in Wisconsin at a different conference that had nothing to do with writing. And I volunteered for the first 20 books. And again, I just cold emailed him and we became friends because that guy just wants to give. He wants to help authors out so badly. He's that kind of guy. It's like, oh, cool. I'm going to meet Craig Martell in person. So I'm expecting some magic pill or strategy that I don't know about. And I'm sitting down with him. I asked him, I said, what can I do to sell more books? How can I market this? And he just smiled at me, took a sip of his drink, and he said, write the next one, Pat.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that it? I was hoping for some like Obi-Wan or Yoda like experience, and not at all.
And we already have the answer, but we don't really want to admit it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, the other thing is a mailing list. I wish I would have started mine earlier, like the first book. I wish I would have. Yeah, man, that would have made so much sense. But I didn't start till a couple of years ago. With a mailing list, and you got to have one.
Yeah, but you started it now, and if you haven't started it, don't beat yourself up. Just go ahead and start it, because wherever you start from, you're going to make progress.
Exactly. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to help you.
No. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It will only help you.
Right.
I say that all the time. Yeah.
And don't feel bad if you have 10 people on your mailing list. If you have 20 people on your mailing list. It's got to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly. In my consulting calls, that's a lot of the times that's what we talk about that. And they're like, I'm like, well, how often are you emailing them? They're like, well, I only have 10 people and they're all my family. I'm like, okay, like how often are you emailing them? Because you want to, first of all, you need to get in that habit. But two, you're acting like the author you want to be. In emailing them regularly, you're acting like a successful author. That's the successful author you want to be. Just because you have 10 people doesn't mean anything. So I agree.
True.
Yeah. I agree. Let's talk about your podcast and police procedural stuff. And what's the most common mistakes authors making when they're writing law enforcement characters?
A lot of the time, it's the crime is a murder. That's typically what in books and TV, et cetera. Yeah, I don't know if you ever saw the series Longmire.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little 3-deputy police department, and somebody's getting murdered in this little town every week.
Every week. I'm like, there aren't that many people there.
I know they're going to run out of a population pretty soon.
Exactly.
That's the Cabot Cove syndrome. It started a long time ago.
My wife and I would watch it, and we're like, man, that's a tough town. And people are getting killed left and right. And I'm like, holy cow.
Right.
They need more.
Stay
cops.
away from there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I guess the trope of the lone wolf detective that is breaking all the rules to solve the case. And it's first off, it's normally never one investigator.
Right.
It's a team. You have CSI people. Where I worked, if there was a homicide, there'd be a boatload of cops, at least one CSI person, 5 or 6 homicide detectives, me, a patrol sergeant, maybe my boss would come out if it was like a real big deal.
Yeah.
And then there would be a homicide sergeant and maybe a homicide lieutenant, and maybe the night inspector would come out. So that was a captain and above.
Yeah.
Somebody's dead, and because they're killed, that's a big deal. Yeah. It's not just like one detective and they wrap it up in a half an hour. Right. All right, let's go home. I guess there was a show, I think it was called The First 48 or something like that.
Yeah.
If you have a good lead, you keep following it until either you catch the bad guy or your lead is exhausted. And we're people, right? It's because I remember working more than 48 hours going for a homicide suspect. And you're just going on adrenaline. You're just like, and then if you don't get them, then you're like, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, come on. And the case doesn't stop there.
Right.
One of the big questions we get in the Facebook group is like, when does a case go cold? And it really never does. We never stop. Until all the avenues are exhausted, but it's always open. It's never closed until we catch the bad guy,
Right.
or the bad guy is dead.
Yeah.
They wind up dying for whatever the reason being. And then there's other stuff too, like technical stuff with guns. They do run out of ammunition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unlike some movies and TV shows, right?
Exactly. I'm like, okay, that's a revolver. That's a 6-shooter. He just shot.
I was going to say there are 6 shots in that gun. Yeah.
Yeah. Or people saying he disengaged the safety on his Glock. Glocks don't have
safety.
So that's, and you will get roasted in reviews with that. There's going to be some gun person, especially. It depends on the genre. Like post-apoc people and some of the crime fiction people, it's like a huge red flag that pops up, and they will be all over it.
Right.
And one more thing is Miranda rights. It's like you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. When you actually do that, there's TV and books or whatever, and they're either doing it right away before they even say hi to this person.
Right.
Which is going to shut them down and they'll never talk to you.
Right.
Or it's the polar opposite, where they're in an interrogation room and they're like literally beating the crap out of somebody. And it's almost every interrogation room is recorded, video and audio. So you're going to prison.
Yeah.
My wife and I were watching, I think it was either Chicago PD or Hawaii 5-0. And there was this female detective that had her gun in the interrogation room, which you never go armed inside that room. Yeah. And this guy is handcuffed behind his back, which never happens in an interrogation room. And she's like, talk. And she's got a gun in this guy's mouth. And I'm like, well, first off, he can't say anything. You have his gun. You have your gun in his mouth. How is he going to say anything? I was just like literally yelling at the TV set. And I'm like, God, is this dumb? Oh, my Lord.
Yeah. Never watch this entertainment about what you're familiar with, because it just ruins it. You just can't. It's hard to enjoy it.
Yeah. I worked in a hospital for 13 years, and I will tell you, never once did I open a supply room door and catch anyone having sex. It was disappointing.
You were at the wrong hospital.
I worked at several. That never happened. Never
opening
happened.
Those doors. Kept trying them.
Yeah. And you watch any of those medical dramas or someone's always in the closet having sex. That never happened. But what is the line though? Like, what is the line between entertainment and getting everything exactly right?
I'll circle back to what I said earlier. It's okay. Police work is often like 5 or 10 minutes of super adrenaline, like you're on a roller coaster. That's the best way I could. You're making a house that has no electricity or lights. It's 2:00 in the morning, and there's somebody in there with a gun. Right. And you've got your gun out and your flashlight, and it's hide and seek, and you hope you win.
Yeah.
Your heart is literally pounding out of your chest, and you're trying to control it, etc. But okay, now you arrest dude. It can be 5, 6, 7 hours of paperwork.
Okay.
So obviously, again, the fast stuff slow, the slow stuff fast. It's okay. You want to really emphasize the cool stuff and the dynamic stuff. And it's okay. Now I wrote reports for 7 hours. You can mention it and let the reader know that it's there. But obviously you're not just going to be mired down in the weeds of doing that. But like some fun stuff can happen too. It's okay. I was writing reports and we ordered pizzas for everybody.
Right. Yeah.
The pizza delivery guy comes to the police station and it's the 4 p.m. to midnight shift is going, and you're midnight to 8 and you're still there. Right. They're all laughing at you and teasing you, making fun of you. Like, you're never
or the person that's been giving you grief happens to walk by your desk and gives you more grief. You can have conflict and action there. Yeah. You just don't have to have hours of car chases
and then also cops are people and they have kids and families and spouses and all that. Phones off the hook. Little Johnny's got parent teacher conferences tonight.
Yeah.
I'm just saying goodbye to my wife. Bye. Good luck, honey. So, so little Johnny's got parent teacher conferences or a basketball game and you're not going to be there.
Right.
So there's a little bit of internal struggle.
Sure.
Like, is this even worth it? It's, and then you're thinking to yourself, I've got to go to work tonight. and it's 8 o'clock at night and I have to be here at midnight. That kind. So there's all kinds of the physical exhaustion, the mental exhaustion, outside influencers. Again, like if you have kids, if you have a spouse, and they want the attention as well. And you feel like you're being pulled in 100 different directions.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can put that in there too.
Yeah. I think going back to the mistakes and stuff, I think as a writer, you've got to figure out how to take the correct, what would really happen, and then make it, you may have to bend some things to make it entertaining. And you have to figure out where that is. And so I was going to say, maybe you could give us an example. If you were writing a scene with, like you said, like the crime is always murder. Like maybe you don't always have a murder, or you have some other crime that starts it off and it leads into something else. Is that how you would, like if somebody came to you and said, help me fix this, help me make this more realistic, what would be your advice for that?
No, I like that. We had a lot of shootings and a lot of homicides, but it wasn't, where I used to work, it was almost every night, but it was at least one shooting a night, if not more. And that was from midnight to 8. We had a little over 1,000 non-fatal shootings and about 250 homicides.
Wow.
And it was in a very small concentrated area, and that's where I worked. And when I worked, that's usually when it would happen. It could happen at any time, but a lot of times that's where it was. But then, I went day shift after 17 years of nights, and it's like, oh, cool, bank robberies. Never had one of those. Or
something new, huh?
Yeah, something new. So you got a bank robbery, and a lot of times bank robbery is just a demand note, or they'll just say, give me the money. And the tellers are trained to just comply, which is good. You don't want to have a shootout. And it's insured. They give them a couple of grand or a couple of hundred or whatever the case may be. Most of them aren't very sophisticated bank robbers like what you would see on TV. I had one guy, dye pack exploded on him, and he's walking away, and I'm driving up, and this guy is like neon green. And I'm like, dude. I'm like, really?
That's great
like,
to put in the book. Yeah, that's awesome.
And he looks at me and he's, what? And I'm like, come on.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. See, that to me would be like an awesome opening scene, like for a book. You'd really grab people's attention, and then you could go into something else. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then sometimes you'll have one crime that spurs, but it ramps up, because I've had bank robberies where somebody start shooting, or pharmacy robberies. That was very popular too. People going after the like oxycodone and Vicodin, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they start popping off rounds. And then before you know it, there's a big car chase.
Yeah.
Then there's a foot chase. Then you got to kick down a door. Then, it snowballs.
Yeah.
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 What snowball?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Karen. Were you going to ask about the characters, the police characters, Sarah, or were you going to do?
Oh, I was just going to say, do you have any other frequently asked questions or mistakes that you see around police procedure? We talked about that a little bit. Do you have anything else on that?
I think the important thing to remember is character and story.
Yeah.
Don't stray away from that. That's, if you have a great story, I think the readers are going to be very forgiving of if you're not going to get a lot of the technical stuff, like 100% correct. If it's a great story, go with it. And character driven, probably one of the bigger mistakes is it's one or the other. It's either the stoic, like Joe Friday from Dragnet. I know I'm showing my age. Or
we know who that is.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You're both younger than me. But either that or the wild and crazy, like Martin Riggs from Lethal Weapon. That's on the edge.
Yeah.
He's on the edge. He's about to bust open. And there's a lot of just normal cops out there that do unnormal stuff, that do extraordinary jobs and are placed in really bizarre situations. And you just have to roll with it.
Yeah.
Probably just, going beyond the expected.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, because we've all seen the cop who's been through the ringer, is the lone wolf character.
Right.
And so if you can write something that's a twist on that, or maybe the complete opposite of that, it will be more interesting, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because if you give them relationships, like the thing about the Lee Child characters is he Jack Ryan? Lee Child?
No,
Jack Reacher. And then the Jack Ryan, Yeah, Jack Ryan character. Man, a lot of Jacks. First of all, don't name your character Jack. And then second of all, but those characters are lone wolf characters. There's not the conflicts that happen in their relationships are pretty fast and surfacey. If you have a character that has deep relationships with people, that makes the conflicts even better, deeper. I think. Yeah, and right. Deeper, and you can do a lot more with those. But some people don't want to write those kinds of characters, and I get it. But they're not all lone wolf characters. They're mostly just normal people doing extraordinary things, as you said. Right. Yeah.
And to clarify, most of the time on a homicide, you'll have a lead detective.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they do all the work.
Yeah.
They're responsible for making sure that all these follow-ups are getting done. And they have a boss.
Yeah.
The way the rank structures are different in different departments. Basically, everybody starts as a cop on the street. And from there, you can stay in patrol or you could go off to the detective side. And in some departments, detective isn't even a promotion. It's just a lateral move. Yeah. You're just wearing a suit and doing investigations instead of patrol. And and again, common trope, the detective is bossing around these cops.
Yeah.
You tell them to shove it up there, you know what, in real life is, no, you're not ordering me.
Yeah.
And they have bosses they have to answer to.
Yeah.
And another common trope is they either have no boss or the boss is either just screaming at them, but nothing really ever happens to them. They get yelled at, and that's the end of it.
We also wanted to ask you about your police academy for crime writers. Can you tell us about that, how that works?
Cop camp. My wife, it's funny. Last year, I got cold emailed by RJ Beam. He is a writer, and he is an instructor at the Fox Valley Technical College's police academy up in Appleton, Wisconsin. And he's, hey, I've got this idea. Why don't we do a small little retreat for writers, and they could play with police stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, no, let's do a conference. You know, I've never done one before, neither did he. But my default is leaning on friends that have done this before.
Sure.
Just, hey, Craig, you run the biggest indie conference. Help me. Yeah, he even printed out a spreadsheet for me with times and tasks, what to do.
Of course he did. Of course he did.
That's the way he thinks. And then I got a hold of Cecilia Mecca because she does smaller writer retreats.
Yeah.
And she said, hit up the Chamber of Commerce. They love to give out swag, coupons for restaurants, whatever. And I'm like, perfect.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So last year we did this cop camp, and it was the Cops and Writers immersive police something or other. And my wife looked at me and said, oh, isn't that cute? You're going to cop camp. So I'm like, you know what? That's catchy. So it morphed into cop camp because of my wife making fun of me. So I'm like, okay, cool. So we had, about 12, 13, 14 people, somewhere in that ballpark. And it was at the Fox Valley Police Academy. And I had Honoré Corder. I had Michael Anderle. Michael stayed for the entire conference.
Wow.
And Honoré was there for 2 days. I had a canine officer from the local police department come in with his dog. And he was a real good public speaker. So I have these writers that were face to face with these people that could give them so much information. And it was a very casual, we did our classwork in the lab.
Yeah.
RJ he's got a doctorate in forensic science. So that's his bag. That's what he teaches mostly, but he teaches other stuff too. And then we had a CSI tech from the Appleton PD come in. And she was 25 years old, super enthusiastic about her job. She had trajectory rods, you could tell where the angle that a bullet comes from wherever. Yeah. And the real nice ones have lasers that stick out of the end, and you could just spray this stuff and you could see the line where the bullet went before it hit whatever it hit.
Yeah.
And everybody was fingerprinting. She brought in all kinds of different items, and they were doing their own fingerprints. Yeah, they're fingerprinting CDs and coffee cups and whatever. Yeah. Just physically doing all of that work.
Yeah.
And the teacher is somebody who literally does it for a living. And then, like I said, Michael stayed for 8 hours, and we more or less all ate together and hung out together. And where else can you sit down and have dinner with somebody that's sold over 1 million books? And has that much experience? Same thing with Honore. They loved her. They loved Michael. I had great speakers. I had Annie Schwartz. She was the author who broke the Jeffrey Dahmer story.
Oh my gosh.
She was in the apartment the night that they were.
Wow. Wow.
So I had her give her presentation, and afterwards they're just mobbed with people asking questions about Jeffrey Dahmer. And she brought her book with her, and she was selling them there, and it was a blast. It was so much fun. And then I had, who else did I have? Oh, I brought in a DA, a retired DA, and she explained, what does it take to charge somebody with a crime? And how would I figure it out? Because again, another trope is a police officer, you're under arrest for, first degree intentional homicide.
Right.
You might arrest somebody for that, but you don't charge them. You have to take that case to a DA. And the DA is, you don't have enough for first degree intentional. I'm going to go with manslaughter or whatever the case may be, because they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Every case that comes across their desk, they have to think to themselves, I'm going to be in a courtroom proving this. I have to convince a jury.
Yeah.
So their burden of proof is much higher than probable cause. Then I had Adam Richardson from the Writers Detective Bureau, great podcast. And he did what a detective does at a crime scene.
Yeah.
And he went step by step through all of that. And we also had them go out and solve a crime. The last day, the beauty of this is this police academy is state of the art. It's 4 or 5 years old. They have an actual city behind the academy. They share it with the fire department that has a little motel. And this is all like real size. They have a motel, they have a bar, they have a gas station, they have a bank.
Wow.
They have an airplane that FedEx gave them. And it's a real like full-size jet parked in back. And it's just amazing the stuff that you could do. Then we also had the students go through what's called a FATS. It's a firearm simulator training.
Right.
Where you have a gun that is the same weight and trigger pull as, say, a Glock. And it doesn't shoot a bullet, it shoots a laser. And you're immersed in this room and there's a scenario. So it's a shoot, don't shoot. And it's so funny to see how some people turn into Dirty Harry or Dirty Harriet really fast.
This all sounds fascinating.
The PTA president, Carol, who,
that's probably the people you least expect. Yeah.
You can stop shooting now.
I was going to say, I think that there are people listening that would be like, this sounds great. Where is this? How do I do it? So do you do this every year?
Yeah, we are going to do it again this May 16 through 19.
Is there a website?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you have a website or a sign up yet?
Sleuths and Storytellers, all one word, /Cop Camp. So sleuthsandstorytellers.com/Cop Camp.
Okay. We'll have that in the show notes, but I don't write that, but man, that sounds
You just want to go for fun?
Yeah, I know. It just sounds like fun.
And it's fun to be with all these writers. Again, it's a solitary business.
Yeah.
At times you're by yourself, and everyone became fast friends. That's like the second day, I'm like, let's pass around everybody's email addresses. And we all did that already.
We already did that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good. And they're all having fun together. And I had one gal come from Madeline Roberts. She came from New Zealand.
Wow.
Wow. That's
amazing.
Cool.
Yeah. That's very cool.
And I had writers that haven't published a book yet. And I had writers that published a bunch. Then I had Mike Landerly that has his own publishing company. So both ends of the spectrum.
That's awesome. This has been so fun. Tell people what you think you've done to set yourself up for success. What's the best thing you've done to set yourself up for success?
Boy, let me think here. A couple of things stick out.
Yeah.
First is be of service to others.
Yeah.
With a purpose and strategy. So example, I told you before, I volunteered to be a room monitor at the first 20 books. I only knew one person and she was gone in 5 minutes, never saw her again.
Right.
And I thought this would be a good way to meet people and get to know Craig and others that were light years ahead of me when it came to book publishing.
Right.
So I did have some chats with him and some others that later on, like much later on down the road, paid dividends. If I was going to ask a question or a favor, it wasn't cold. I wasn't
Right.
somebody that they didn't know.
Right.
You make these relationships, and I helped a bunch of people. Like I said, they'd be happy hour people would be coming up to me all the time and says, hey, is this plausible? Is this believable, et cetera? And I was more than happy to help people.
Yep.
And if you help other people, not to be too rose-colored glasses or whatever, I think the returns are immense. They really are. And
I love that.
the second thing I would say is we make our own luck.
Yep.
How many times have you heard, wow, an overnight success that took 30 years of really I interviewed Ava Natalio on my podcast. She wrote the book, The Memory Box. Awesome book.
Yeah.
And she started out at Estee Lauder in marketing. And she learned a lot about marketing from Estee Lauder. The story of Estee Lauder is she was making this fragrance in her garage or basement with her dad or her uncle. And she went to Saks Fifth Avenue and they're like, no, she really wanted it there. So what she did was she spilt a bunch of her perfume on the front. There's this huge carpeting that comes from the front door, and she spilt it all over it. And then the next day she called and said, are people asking about that smell? They're like, yeah, but we don't carry that perfume. I said, that's mine. So she's when she came out with the Memory Box, one of the things that she did was she hired a camera crew to go with her on the beach in New Jersey. And she was wearing a t-shirt. It's like, what's your beach read? And she had a picture of her book on the back, and she brought some of her friends with her. And again, she hired a film crew, and she would just go up to people if she saw them reading at the beach. She said, what books do you like? Here, have a copy of my book. And they had balloons in the shape of boxes. And then what she did was, before she did all this, she was very purposeful in her marketing and putting herself out there. She would only go to beaches that had bookstores along the beach. And she says, you need to stock my book because I'm going to have blah, blah, blah. And then she would do book signings there. And one thing led to another with that. So I was thinking to myself, I'm like, that's a fantastic idea. So I was having a book signing at a cigar lounge that I frequent. And I know the owner fairly well. And what I did was I called local TV stations and a local newspaper, and the local newspaper was like, yeah, that sounds really good. And at the last second, she's like, can't be there, but take a lot of pictures. I'm like, okay. And she interviewed me over the phone. So real nice article in the newspaper about me, lots of pictures of the event. I sold a ton of books.
That's awesome.
So yeah, put yourself out there with strategy and purpose and make your own luck.
Yep. Very good. That's awesome.
That is awesome. Yeah. Good advice. And so tell us, so we'll have the link for the cop camp in there, but tell everybody where they can find all your other podcasts and your website, stuff like that.
Website is copsandwriters.com. Facebook group is Cops and Writers. Brew City Blues is my latest on Amazon with Michael. And I'm currently writing a serial killer series on my own.
Wow. We didn't talk about serial killers. You might have to come back.
I'd be more than happy to.
Sounds great. We will have all those links in the show notes. And we want to also mention our sponsor for this month is BookFunnel. So if you're interested in BookFunnel, go to bookfunnel.com/WIKT-podcast. And we want to say thanks to Alexa Larberg for editing and producing the podcast, and to Adriel Wiggins for doing all the admin. We'll see everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.